Oh man, this is a pleasure, mate.
Pleasure's all mine, brother. Appreciate you having me.
No, thanks for coming on and talking on some deep stuff to a stranger on the internet. It's a, it's a weird concept, but there's some people out there that are going to need to hear it.
Totally. And listen, that's what it's all about. It's about having a conversation, opening it up, becoming vulnerable. That's what Movember is all about, especially when it comes to mental health and even prostate and testicular cancer. Like it's a scary time for a lot of men who are going through that. And it helps opening it up. You can't shove your emotions down. So
Mm.
yeah, man, I'm happy to have an honest conversation with you.
That's it, man. I think the older I sound like I'm 80 when I say this, but the older I get, the more I realize I appreciate honest conversations. Even if someone's going to turn around and was like, Alex, you seriously fucked up. I'll be like, you know what, man? I really appreciate the fact that you think we've got this environment, this safe space between us when you can voice that. And I think not voicing or not asking or being worried about something and kind of bottling that bad boy up, it's the worst we can do, right? It's like putting Mentos in Diet Coke.
Totally. And then fizzles up at the wrong time somewhere down the line. So that's a great analogy, and it's interesting you say that because I feel like nowadays, especially with the current landscape and culture we find ourselves in, everyone is kind of scared to say the wrong thing, and everyone kind of beats around the bush. And it's important to be honest with folks um, and tell them how you really feel, because at the end of the day, you're taking on all of those negative emotions, and to your point, like it's going to bubble up at the wrong time down the line. So yeah, good on you, mate.
The concept of being scared of saying the wrong thing is quite a strange one to me. Like I've everything I do, I usually get it wrong like the first 10 times anyway, you know what I mean? So that's what the whole process of life is, right? Failing, figuring it out, and going again, failing again, figuring out a different thing. And the fact of if you try something, you say something, obviously, as long as it's not a hate speech or something, okay, fine. That we all agree on that. That's something that we shouldn't be doing. But if you try something and it misses the mark, like that's not just that person kind of shunned to the wayside and that's it, they're done. It's like, no, they're attempting something, they're trying it. Like they might have said the wrong thing. And I say it in class all the time when I coach. It's like, guys, if I say something that's beyond the line, I'm Mank for Christ's sake. I'm going to say something and somebody's not going to like it. That's okay. Just say, hey, coach, like I'd prefer you not to say that. And I'll be like, thank you. Appreciate it. I've learned something.
We're human, man. I mean, that's the best way to learn is by mistakes. Like
Yeah, man.
at the end of the day, nobody's perfect. Um, and there's such a fine line these days. It's funny. I feel like people, expect you to kind of operate in this very tidy and buttoned up box, and that's just not how our brains function. That's not how the world works. People make mistakes. But to your point, man, that's the best way to learn. And I'll give you an example. I before I started working at Movember, I actually ran my own startup in the crypto philanthropy space. So we would basically help nonprofits fundraise through crypto asset donations, NFTs, all that good stuff. And then obviously, market crashed, shit hit the fan. The whole FTX Sam Bankman-Fried situation was was a tough hill to climb, as a small business, and just kind of trying to fight through that narrative was difficult. But my point is, um, you know, it's such an early space. Like Web3 especially is like the wild, wild west, you know what I mean? And we were kind of shooting from the hip and learning as we go. And we made our fair share of mistakes along the way. We launched our own token, and at one point it was peaking like crazy, and then shit hit the fan and it lost all of its value, and people are angry. And for me, it was the best way to learn, not only about business but about myself, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, what I can improve on. So, anyways, not to get off the rails here, but I hear what you're saying.
No, dude, I think that Wild West is important, mate. I think that's the way we are supposed to learn. Ideally, we'd learn a better way. You'd read a textbook and you get it right perfectly, right? But I mean, I don't know about you, man, but that's not the way I work. Like,
Same.
me and textbooks don't go hand in hand. Just learn, evolve, adapt, trip up, fall down, ask for feedback, constructive and kind of one where it breaks you in two, and you're like, oh, that one kind of hurt, but okay, like maybe that was something I needed to hear, and just being less defensive.
Absolutely. And it's such a different time compared to when we grew up. I'm not sure how old you are. I'm 30. And so, when we grew up, we didn't have we didn't have Snapchat, we didn't have Chat GPT as a resource. Like it was all textbooks. And I'm the same way, man. I have ADD, and the best way I like to learn is through experience and getting my hands dirty and kind of fuel by fire type of mentality. And part of me is envious of the kids these days and all the resources and tools they have at their disposal. But at the same time, um, I think they're learning the easy way. They're getting the easy way out. And to me, like I value the era that we grew up in, because I kind of saw the best of both worlds, pre-technology, pre-social media, using our imaginations, being creative people, and then growing up with technology, to the point where we understand it and we're fairly innovative in that sense. So it was kind of the best of both worlds as a millennial, 30-year-old millennial. But yeah, man, anyways, to me, that's the best way to learn. Just get your hands dirty and make some mistakes along the way.
Yeah, that's it, bro. And it comes across more personable, like I don't know about you, but if I have a conversation, whether it's with a bro, whether it's with a lady, whether it's with, a business partner, whether it's with an employer, or the barista behind the counter just making your morning coffee, whatever the fuck it is, it doesn't matter. Like if somebody's able to show a little bit of like vulnerability and reality, like, what, man, nah, it's had a couple of shit days. That to me is like you have given me the top level of respect,
Yeah.
and you might not even know my damn name, and I think that's beautiful. You're able to create this connection between people.
100%, brother. And good segue to explaining my motivation, not only at Movember, but in life, and kind of the reason why I'm so drawn to mental health and into giving back to some of these causes that we represent. And you're speaking on vulnerability, putting yourself out there. I had a difficult life experience. Let's see, about 9 years ago. Had just graduated from university here in the States. Was back home in Virginia, taking care of my mom, who was dealing with some heavy depression and anxiety at the time. And unfortunately, depression got the best of her. She ended up taking her own life back in 2014. And needless to say, for any 21-year-old kid, kind of turned my world upside down, and I was kind of left as an only child to pick up the pieces. And for me, incredibly traumatizing event. Obviously, it certainly forced me to grow up quickly, and it lit a fire under my ass to do something purposeful and do something meaningful with our lives. And that experience, as terrible as it was, inspired me to have conversations like this and to help other people that might be going through similar experiences with suicide and mental health issues, get through those times and realize that they truly aren't alone, and that we're all dealing with our shit on a daily basis, and we all have bad days. And this was, keep in mind, 8 years ago when my mom passed, and fast forward to where I'm at now at Movember. It's just amazing how life comes full circle. And now I'm at the forefront of one of the biggest mental health nonprofits in the world. So my point is, I think it's always important to share your why, be vulnerable, open up, have conversations like this, because you never know who you're gonna impact down the line just by opening up and sharing.
Dude, thanks for sharing that with me, man. That's some heavy stuff, and yeah, dude, I feel that hard, But I think people's whys, no matter what they do, like regardless of that, whether it's the reason why they cut grass or the reason why they clean toilets or whatever, it's so powerful, and people can relate to that emotion, rather than I don't know what it's like in that experience. I don't know what it's like growing up over there and doing that, or okay, great, but you can relate to the emotion, because that's the spectrum that we all feel. We're all on that spectrum, and we just kind of cruise from one side to the next, right? And yeah, that's real powerful, man.
Yeah, brother, I appreciate it. And again, you know, I tell people that, and I share that experience, not to play the sympathy card by any means, but I do think it's important to kind of explain at least my purpose in life, and what, you know, what fuels me every day. Um, and again, it's amazing how far we've come as a society, in particular when it comes to mental health, and some of the resources and tools that we have now are fantastic. But there's so much more work to be done, man, especially with all the shit going on in the world, with, you know, social isolation after COVID, struggling economies. Like, people are freaking stressed right now and anxious, and sadly, the, you know, suicide rate is going up, even with all these amazing tools and organizations that we have, particularly in men. I'm not sure if you know this, but 4 out of 5 suicides are made by men, which is, you know, fairly alarming. So clearly there's a lot of work to be done. Part of what we're trying to do at Movember is to make some of these tangible tools and resources more readily accessible and affordable for men, younger men in particular. Try to plant that seed early on with them, just to, you know, make them realize that you have a lot of things at your fingertips that can help you get through these difficult times. And again, like, it's as cliche as it sounds to say you are not alone. There are millions of people in the world, if not billions, that are dealing with shit like this. So just really pushing forward that narrative and that messaging, and trying to make them realize that, you know, they have tools at their disposal. You know what I mean?
Why do you think it's 4 out of 5 with 12 dudes? Why do you think that is?
I think it stems back to what we talked about earlier, man, in terms of shoving our emotions down. Like, you know, as a guy, we don't tend to like, or we don't like to, you know, open up and be sensitive and emotional. Like, we feel like we need to be masculine and buttoned up and strong, right? Like, that's the male mentality. And I think ultimately that might be our biggest downfall in terms of shoving our emotions down, to the Mentos and the Coke analogy that you said earlier, like, until it bubbles up in a negative way at some point down the line. And to me, like, that's when you have a mental health crisis or suicidal ideation. Like, that's, you know, that mento is those negative thoughts and mental illness within your body that you're just shoving down, shoving down, shoving down. Whereas you need to open it up and get that shit out of your system. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I think it really stems back to what we talked about earlier at the end of the day.
Yeah, man, I think so too, dude. And I think you know, as human beings, we like to dabble in the extremes, you know, and it's like, yeah, there's a time and a place for just getting on with it and getting things done, like for the literal sense of getting things done, right? But then also you need to debrief. You know, even in the military, you have to debrief. You have to come out of it and you have to like slowly transition out of it. You need a cool down in a workout or after a game or something like that. You go back and watch film. You know, how could you have gone better? And it's like we don't transition that into everyday life, into civilian life or non workouts, right? Non sport. And I like sporting analogies mainly because it's straight away. You know what I mean? It's instant. It's instantaneous. It's like bang. Like as soon as you on the pitch, you get smashed in the face. You get smashed in the face. It's bang. It's right there. You know,
Yep.
and I think sometimes we need that. You know, it's like, oh, okay, I got an issue in front of me. I got to tackle that. But then we need to do a better job of then winding down from it, right? And be like, okay, well, what were your emotion like? You know, how did you deal with it? How would you like to deal with it next time? Most of the time, from a dude's perspective, it's I want to deal with it better. I didn't deal with it
Yeah.
the best way I did, you know.
Which again goes back to what we talked about earlier in terms of learning from our mistakes, and
Yeah.
but not dwelling on those mistakes. I, at least personally, for me individually, like, you know, I've made mistakes in my life. I've had regrets, unfortunate situations that I probably dwell on far too often, and have had a ton of sleepless nights over little mistakes that, you know, could have been avoided or whatever it may be. And that shit just eats you up inside. Like, I think for me, I heard an interesting analogy the other day, in terms of being a golfer. And a lot of golfers have amnesia on their next shot. If they have a, if they miss a putt, or if they had a crappy shot before, they are the best athletes at just forgetting their past mistake and moving on to the next shot. And that's why some of the best golfers in the world are as good as they are, because of that mental fortitude and that level of amnesia when they make a mistake. And I think as guys, or people in general, like, we need to almost think similarly, unless it's like a grave mistake that you that you have to dwell on. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't let that shit eat you up inside.
Mm. It's like the age old saying, right? It's like no one cares what you used to be able to do. Everyone cares what you can do now.
Exactly, brother. Yep.
And yeah, it's so difficult, isn't it, man? I think dudes are scared, if I'm honest with you. Like, you see these physically big like creatures, and we usually have deeper voices and carry a bit more muscle mass on the frame, and it might be intimidating to some, whether it's our species or the next, right? And you're like, yeah, but that kind of persona is birthed out of fear, man.
Yeah.
It's birthed out of being scared. Like that thing in front of you used to be a scared little lad. And we need to be able to, like you said, it was like looking at young men. I think that's beautiful. That's poetic in nature, because we need to do something for those people. Same as young ladies, right? And we need to listen and understand from their point of view as well, because it's going to be slightly different. A lot of similarities, but
Yep.
slightly different sometimes. But if we're using the dude's example, it's like, well, a lot of us, find purpose in ways that we probably shouldn't have. Find family comforts in environments and with people that we probably shouldn't be doing with. And it's like, okay, cool. How do we fulfill that deep need of purpose in a young man's like mind, developing mind, may I add, you
Yeah.
know, before they end up getting in that type of trouble or bottling it up, and then it comes out, right? And I'm a big advocate of, I think most problems in the world stems from a broken boy, so it's
Mm.
like, why don't we follow that river upstream and tackle the source, rather than be like, oh yeah, like domestic violence or petty crime is an issue. I was like, yeah, no shit, it's an issue. Of course it is, and we need
Right.
to like deal with that right away. But we also need to stop it from happening. Rather than like, oh, we're just going to react when it happens and slap them on the wrist and put them behind bars. It's like, people don't need to be hurt. We can stop this from happening, and that takes years in the making. It's a harder journey, granted. I don't know the answer, again, granted, again, but
Yep.
I think we should stop it rather than allowing it to happen and then react.
Totally, man. Well said. And I think to your point, it's really, at least with mental health, it's almost a systemic issue where, as you said, like, we need to kind of plant that seed with our youth at an early age and kind of instill more positive behaviors and more positive habits in their lives. Because I'll give you an example. On a personal level, after my mom passed, again, incredibly traumatizing, like really fucked me up, to the point where I was just kind of ignoring it and not properly grieving and processing it, the right way. And for example, I was abusing drugs, was just, had a lot of negative patterns and habits in my life. Um, Ended up seeing a therapist, ended up practicing meditation, quit doing some of the drugs, and it truly saved my life. And obviously having a support system with friends and family certainly helps. Um, but I'll give you an example. I moved out to Los Angeles last year, and a buddy of mine dragged me to it was like a group meditation class with a bunch of folks here in Venice, California. And it was a sanctioned psilocybin event. So they would give, everyone that attended, mushrooms in powdered form, in like this cacao drink kind of ceremony thing. And then they would take you through like a 3-hour guided meditation, basically encouraging you to go back to your most traumatic experience in your life in order to kind of move past it and shed layers. And their point was, you know, um, over the years, after you're born, over the years, you build up so many different layers of stress, of anxiety, of trauma, difficult life experiences. And as a person, you need to do your best to shed those layers over the years to get back to your baby like form, your primitive state. Because think about when we were kids, when we were babies or whatever it may be, we were so blissfully ignorant and oblivious to the problems in the world. I mean, granted, we didn't have responsibilities or bills or anything like that, but just that state of mind, this class really taught me to try to get back to that state of mind and to appreciate the little things and be grateful and look around, man, look up at the sky, look at the clouds, look at the sun, like appreciate the little things and the little moments in life because it goes so fucking fast. So anyways, I just thought that was interesting as we talk about like instilling those positive habits in youth at an early age. I personally think meditation saved my life, and I'm a big advocate for this kind of psilocybin narrative that we're seeing these days. So I just think it comes down to education, telling kids, young boys, young girls that it's okay to open up and have these conversations. If you're feeling sad, talk about it. Don't be bashful, practice meditation, take some time away from your fucking phone. I know it's easier said than done. I am addicted to my phone. I'll be the first to admit it, but at least I'm aware that, I could set it aside for an hour and meditate, and it's not the end of the world. So just kind of instilling those little habits here and there, I think will go a long way.
Yeah, dude, 100%. That's embarking on the journey of preventative medicine type stuff. It sounds a little bit hairy fairy and hippy dippy, but I'm like, yeah, but we come from the ground, and that's where we're going to end up again. So we could probably use it. I'm kind of fascinated in the whole herbal medicine, psilocybin, marijuana type stuff, of the sense of holistic approach. How do we heal certain things? I don't know the answer. I'm interested to hear people's stories. I've never tried it. Great. I think some places a bit more progressive, states included. Some places a bit more conservative minded. I know the UK is a bit more conservative about that type of stuff. Central Europe is a bit more progressive with it. I'm like, great. If you can get in there, it's legal. Fucking get in there. Like let's like talk about this again. It's like, well, try without it, try with it. What happens? What is it? And then
Yeah.
understand the law of individuality, right? I was like, well, that was a good or bad experience with that individual. Okay, cool. Now let's try it with another individual, and
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is a creative outlet, man. I really do. I think a form of self-expression in whatever form that is, whether that's meditation and it's kind of usually internal and reflective back within yourself, or whether that's a sport or in a gym, which usually is obviously with an inanimate object, and you kind of throwing these bad boys around. You kind of look like a bit of a weirdo throwing stuff above your head and letting it fall to the ground. But you're expressing yourself, and I think we need to do a better job um, with the youth males to allow them to express themselves in other things than sport, right?
Yeah.
And clearly, like this is how I make my money is helping people get a little bit fitter, healthier, and move a little bit better, right? And hopefully they've got a smile on their face because I've said some funny shit. Um, but at the same time, we need something different. It's like you can only train for so long, guys. Like I don't want to see you 7 days a week, 6 hours a day. I was like, this is not how you make your money. And also, you're gonna get sick of my face. Like go home. You got a family, go see somebody else.
Yeah.
So we need a different outlet, and I think we need to
Totally.
be able to um, give it to younger lads and allow them to experiment with different outlets. Like I wrote poetry, for Christ's sake. I'm a guy that lifts weights, but also sits down and like cries into a notebook. It's a bit polarized, it's a bit imbalanced, but creates the balance in the middle. And I'm like, that's the friggin' point, guys. Like the sun
It's
comes up
beautiful,
and it
man.
goes back down again. Like we might be
There's
these big, strong individuals, and then at the same time, you need to be able to effectively articulate what you want to say and how you feel, and it's how you create connectivity. You can't just be this big monster sat in a cage. That's like that's Mr. Hyde. We need the Dr. Jackal as well.
totally, man. And it's beautiful that the contrast between weightlifting and poetry, and that's kind of symbolic of life in general, man. There's peaks and valleys, and there's hardships and there's beautiful moments. And I had a funny conversation with an Uber driver the other night, this guy from Egypt, and we were just talking about the states right now, and gun control, struggling economy, and there's just kind of this sense, at least over here, almost like a doom and gloom type sense over here. And I I hate that negativity because I think there's so much beauty in this world and so many beautiful and amazing people. And in my opinion, the vast majority of people are good and they have good hearts, and a few bad apples like ruin the tree every once in a while, but we can't dwell on those bad apples, man. We got to focus on the positive stuff and the beacons of light in this world, like yourself and like folks at Movember. Like that's what it's all about. So you're absolutely right, man. It's about finding positive outlets in our daily life. And it's easier said than done, man. There's so many freaking distractions these days. I mentioned our cell phones. Like there's so many distractions, but even just taking 5 minutes aside every day to focus on your breath work or to look up at the sky. Like there's so many different forms of therapy and meditation that people don't realize. Like even just like sitting on the beach, looking at the water, getting lost in the waves. Like to me, that's a form of meditation. I go for runs. I'm a big runner. Like that's therapeutic for me. It doesn't have to be like a 30 to 60, 60-minute, like intense meditation breath work. Like it can be anything you want. You know what I mean? So just to your point, it's about instilling those habits early on with our youth.
Yeah, for sure, dude. And um, you get me all fired up here. Like I'm feeling like I'm ready to go. But like I
Oh
want to
yeah.
add something. I knew it would have helped me as a kid. Um, but I think it goes back to that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde analogy, right? And I wrote something down a while back, and it was like I think every man is two men, one they're trying to be and one they're trying to kill. The problem is they'll never be either.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
I think that's what we kind of are. We are this weird, like polarized, conflicting, kind of good and evil, light and dark kind of creature, right? And I think it's a shame that we've created this kind of sense of bastardization towards the aggression type side, right? And you got to be really careful the way I articulate myself here, but I mean it in a way of that's kind of who you are. If you fight against it, you're putting more Mentos in that Diet Coke, mate.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to use it constructively,
Yep.
right? So I'm like, okay, cool. For me, example, I train. For you, example, you run, right? And it's like do something that you're able to use that energy. You figure out yourself. You develop a deeper relationship with yourself, and you can use it in a constructive avenue, right? Rather than like, no, men are not supposed to be like that. And you're like, dude, if that's who you are, that's okay. Now figure out a good way of using it rather than just allowing it to eat you up inside and you lash out at somebody else.
Well said, brother. Yeah, 110%, man. Um I think it's so cool that our generation is as progressive and aware um as we are. Like whether it's global socioeconomic issues in the world, like mental health, education, civil rights, like whatever it is, our generation seems to be ahead of the ball and progressive in that sense. And it's not as stuffy and traditional as it used to be, at least as our parents grew up, and it was very by the book, like you got to act a certain way. Now we have the freedom to be whoever we want to be, for better or for worse, and um and there's so many different resources at our disposal now. You can learn anything on YouTube. There's a million podcasts now, and everyone has their own voice and isn't afraid to express it. So I think that's so cool, man, and it's only going to get better. But again, we got to just plant the right seeds along the way, and make sure the next generation is set up for success, both mentally and physically. So I'm with you, brother, 100%.
For sure, man. I think we need to um, pursue listening and talking, at the same time. Like if somebody's talking, you shut the fuck up and you listen, right? But at the same time, like that table is going to turn, and you're going to have a chance to voice your opinion. And I think that's where we're at. I think I'm a little bit skeptical, and like, guys, we need to be careful that people don't just start to shout,
Yeah,
and like we're not listening to one another. I was like, guys, I don't know what it's like growing up in the States. So why am I then portraying my prejudice on it? It doesn't make any sense.
right.
I can add like a point, maybe I might have a answer. I don't have the answer. I'm blonde, for Christ's sake. Like, I don't know many things. Like, it's just, yeah, okay, listen to people. Yeah, great. And then come to a collaborative, decision, or just discard it. I listened to the 15 opinions. You're like, none of them, I don't think any of them are going to work for me. I'm like, great. At least you like went through the process of listening to them, and maybe they planted a seed.
For sure. And that's one thing I hate about the States. I'm not sure how it is in the UK or New Zealand. But just the polarization of politics in general. You have right and left. That's pretty much it. There's really no common ground anymore. And I just wish people on both sides would listen to the other side and educate themselves, because that's the best way to learn, and that's the best way to move forward and to find that common ground. But now every topic is so freaking polarizing, man. It's exhausting. So that's one thing over here that I really don't love. But I will say, just a quick plug for some of the tools that we have at Movember, if you
Go
don't
for it,
mind
man.
me sharing.
No, no, go for it, please.
We talk about mental health, and having those difficult conversations. And everyone is, not everyone, but a lot of people that in life are touched by suicide, or are going to be touched by suicide to some degree. And it's a tough pill to swallow, and it's a difficult conversation to have. But we do have this tool called Movember Conversations. If you go to our website, it's just Movember, conversations.movember.com. Excuse me, conversations.movember.com. And it's basically a helpful resource guide that answers questions in real time if you or a loved one is going through a difficult time, or having, suicide ideation or mental health issues, or whatever it may be. It kind of walks you through from start to finish on how to approach that person, the right messaging points. And it's just a really helpful tool for someone that might go into that situation blindly and might not have any idea how to approach a difficult situation like that. So just wanted to plug that tool. And then, we're in February right now. Our next big campaign is about 9 months away, coming up in November. So other ways to get involved in Movember is to set up a fundraiser, raise money with you and your boys, grow out a sweet mustache. It's a really fun time. It's a cool way to raise money for a good cause. You can host an event. You can mow your own way. One thing that we like to encourage folks to do is to commit to walking or running 60 miles during the month of November for the 60 men that we lose to suicide every year. Every hour. So there's a bunch of different ways you can get involved with Movember. But ultimately, just get involved and spread awareness and spread positivity in the world. That's the best way you can get involved. It doesn't have to be a monetary value. If you're a good person, good heart, share the right message, and are nice to people, that's what Movember is all about, man. So again, thank you for having me on and for helping me spread this message in the world.
No, brother, this is honestly a privilege, man. Listen to people being able to just kind of stand in front of people, listen to them, talk to them. It's an absolute privilege, man. I can't, if I describe it fully, we're going to be here for hours. So, dude, I just want to say thank you. Shout
Yeah,
out
bro.
the email address again, man. Was it
Uh,
conversation start?
conversations.movember.com. And I'll send you all of our resource links and stuff in case you want to include that on the description for the
Yeah, yeah,
podcast or
for
whatever.
sure. It'll be down there.
Okay.
That's a really, really cool tool. I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Yeah, man. Again, it's just all about putting these like tangible tools in people's hands, and make it a little more accessible for folks that might not have the means. So it's all we can do these days.
Yes, sir. Brother, we got to do this again sometime.
Absolutely, man. If you're ever in Los Angeles, please, would love to bring you by the office, grab a
Uh,
beer, whatever it may be.
I'll be in, mate. I can't wait.
Love it.
Fuck
All
yeah. Speak to you
right.
soon, brother.
All right, Alex. Appreciate the time, man. Seriously, thank you.
Thanks, man. Bye,
Talk soon.
everybody.
Bye. Cheers.